This is a very distasteful subject, but it keeps coming up, and I suppose that I would like to address it in my own way. The subject of the alleged pedophilia proclivities of Islamic societies. I was once in the Muslim quarter of Agra, India, which is a city with a proportionally large number of Muslims, and I was staying in a hotel with 3 other travelers, 2 Israelis and a Norwegian, all of us guys, and we had a room that overlooked the street, and in the Muslim quarter of most Indian cities, and I presume in most Muslim countries, houses' balconies have large lattice work that sort of obscures the view from the street inside, but allows you to see from the inside out. That way the women of the house can go outside, look out into the street, get the fresh air, but nobody can see them, so they don't have to be covered. It's just a convenient way to allow the ladies a little bit of freedom. So I was out on the balcony, and it was safe for me to be out there the way I was dressed. I was just about to get into the shower, and I just had a towel around my waist, but because there was nothing but guys there, I didn't much care. But there was a houseboy that had come up to show us how to use the water appliances in the bathroom. It's kind of, each place is different, and you got to figure it out in these primitive cheap hotels that you see throughout India. So he'd done this, and I was coming back into the hotel to get into the shower when the houseboy, who must have been about 9 years old, sort of aggressively thrust his buttocks into my groin. And I was clad only in a towel, and this shocked me, but I thought, all right, I don't think he understands what the implications of that gesture are, so I had my shower, and then all 4 of us went down and ordered something to eat, and I discreetly mentioned to one of the waiters, I said, look, this is what happened when I was upstairs, and you must tell the houseboy he mustn't do that again, because I don't really want to get into too much detail here, but it's seen as a sexual thing in my culture, especially in those circumstances, and it's very, very, very disturbing for us foreigners. And they said, oh yeah, it is. It actually probably was sexual, because, well, we have a piece of him all the time. He's just a houseboy, a street kid that comes in here and helps us around the place, and he lives better than most of the other street kids, and we pay him a little bit of money to go into the back room with him every so often. They were quite open about this, and that shocked me. That shocked me, and I just sort of said, okay, and that was the last I ever spoke about that. You do come across this a fair amount in India, and it's not just India. You see a lot of that in Southeast Asia as well. I was once in Phnom Penh when I was offered the services of a child by a guy on a motorcycle who had first attempted to sell me drugs and women, and I was just sort of laughing, sort of saying, no, 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 because you're constantly having to fend off offers of that nature in Southeast Asia as a white guy. And then he said, well, how about we get you a child? And of course my amusement then immediately turned to rage, and I wanted to knock him off his motorcycle because I was insulted. I was insulted by the implication that because I'm a white middle-class middle-aged male that I'm automatically a pedophile, plus I sort of thought, you scumbag, dealing in the trafficking of children. Common sense got the better of me, and I just kept walking. I wish that I'd had the common sense to take down his license plate number, because they usually have a rat line in most of those countries where you can sort of say, this guy, you tell the police and they go after these people. I've had other experiences like that in the Philippines, other ones of the similar nature in India. Another one actually took place in the Philippines. I don't want to go into detail, but it was a lot nastier. But what shocked me about all of this is the way that it was handled by the local people. In the Philippines, I had a child sort of make very blatant sexual advances on me, very blatant, very graphic, in front of a whole bunch of people, and everyone just laughed. They thought this was funny. This was a slum area of Cebu, and people could think of no other reason why I would be there other than I'm looking for some kind of vice which is unobtainable in my own country. Unfortunately, you do see a lot of white men in that part of the world that have gone there for that very reason. And if your tastes run in that general direction, you can usually indulge your proclivities without fear of any serious repercussions, and there's a reason for it. In India, in Southeast Asia, and I believe in most of the Muslim world in general, and throughout a lot of Latin America, there is a terrible culture of silence that surrounds the sexual exploitation of street children. This child that had made the sexual advance on me in India, in Agra, was a street child. The children that had done the same things to me in Southeast Asia were street children. It's not that these countries are more tolerant of pedophilia. Certainly the Islamic religion does not tolerate this kind of thing, but their antiquated social structure, the backwardness of the society, which is a backwardness which has nothing to do with Islam or Roman Catholicism in Southeast Asia and the Philippines, or Buddhism or Roman Catholicism in Latin America. It's just an attitude that says street people, people at the extreme bottom fringe of the social structure, are just so much garbage. That, to me, is what causes this kind of thing. It has nothing to do with religion, with sexual tastes, with sexual ethics. It's just that the normal rules of society do not apply to the people on the absolute bottom. And that is common in a lot of the non-Western world. And it's often hard for us to understand. And as I say, there is this terrible culture of silence that surrounds it. If it's not affecting, quote-unquote, respectable people, children from respectable families, it's not important. That really is what facilitates this kind of thing. Now, before we get too carried away with how it doesn't happen in the West, of course it happens here. I live in a city that has a large population, a large underclass, made up of largely Aboriginal Canadians, Native Canadians. It is an unfortunate fact of life in this city. It's sort of one of those things that everyone knows about, but no one really talks about, that if you really want to have your wicked way with a child, you can usually get away with it if you go to the area where the prostitutes mingle in my city and do what you want to do with an Aboriginal street kid. That's a horrible, horrible indictment of the city that I live in, the country that I live in. But it is a fact, to the point where the police now have big posters up saying pedophilia is a crime, or child sexual abuse is child abuse. And you have the poster has a picture of a child, a young Aboriginal child, leaning into a car in the way that street hookers usually do. And of course you see the John, his arm really, but he's obviously a middle-aged white guy. Now I think that probably most of the Johns actually are middle-aged white guys. As you see in Southeast Asia, so many of the Johns are Europeans, North Americans, middle-aged white guys. To the point where the local people often think, oh, you're white, you're middle-aged, you've traveled here by yourself, therefore you're a pedophile, you're seeking to have sex with 10-year-old girls or boys. That's not a very nice feeling, to have people just assume that you're like that. In fact, it's probably one of the worst experiences of a lifetime. You feel like you've been defiled by the way that the people around you have thought about you. And for all those people who like to blame Muslims for this kind of thing, I would like you to put yourself in the position of being a white guy in Southeast Asia traveling around and have people just assume, just because you are who you are, that you're automatically a pedophile, because that's what you're doing when you say that Muslims are more likely to be pedophiles. It's not a nice experience. I'm not saying that anyone's hands are clean here. Like I say, I admit that the Islamic world has a problem. But so do we. We have a problem. We have to be open about this kind of thing in our society. We have to get off our moral high horse, stop judging everyone else for something that is rampant in our own society. But by the same token, if we want to criticize someone else's culture, we have to let them criticize ours, and we have to look at our culture with a less biased eye. It's not a nice experience to realize that the other guy honestly thinks that you sexually abuse children. Don't start accusing the other guy of the same thing unless you're prepared to deal with it yourself. And the biggest issue that I find that gets lost in this Muslims or pedophiles foolishness is the plight of the children themselves that may be involved all over the world. I think that this Muslims or pedophiles thing is just a smear against Muslims, and that the people that are doing it couldn't care less whether or not it's actually happening there or not. As long as they get to smear the other guy's name, the children really aren't what's important. Think about that. Thank you.